Welcome, welcome, welcome. This is Peter Winnick. I'm the founder and CEO of Thought Leadership Leverage, and you're joining us on the podcast, Leveraging Thought Leadership. Today, I'm really excited. My guest is a gentleman by the name of Brian Smith. He's a founder of a little company that you may recognize or may have on your feed called UGG, Australia brand. He graduated in 1978 as a chartered accountant in Australia, then came to California, and with only $500 in capital, he imported boot samples, and over the next 17 years, built the UGG Australia brand into a multi-million-dollar brand. He sold it in 95, and it's now a multi-billion-dollar company. He's the author of a book, The Birth of a Brand, Launching Your Entrepreneurial Passion and Soul, and is a keynote speaker and does a lot of work with entrepreneurs and small businesses. So I am delighted to have you on board today, Brian. As we've chatted, big fan. So welcome aboard today.
Hey, Peter, thanks for having me.
Yeah, so I think let's do this in two ways. First, let's pretend the world was still normal and we weren't, all locked down in our homes. Right. And tell us a little bit about how you got into this side of it, right? So the keynoting, the speaking, the working with entrepreneurs, right? So how did that evolve your post-UGG days?
Okay, it was almost osmosis. After I sold UGG in the late 90s, I started a precast concrete wall delivery business that did fantastic. We put up over 100 structures in 4 years in Southern California for the military. And then in 2009, the recession hit and the construction orders stopped like overnight. So I had kept notes all through the 18 years it was, and we're building the UGG brand. But I'd see something and I'd say, that'd be great in a book one day, And I started out with a little 1-inch binder that grew to like a 3-inch binder. And when the recession hit, I thought, I got all this dead time. What can I do? So I pulled out all those notes and rearranged them. And that became the basis of the birth of a brand, which is...
So let me pause you there for a minute, because I think there are some parallels to what's going on in the world today. Although the crisis in 08-09, looking back, was probably a hiccup compared to what we're experiencing and will experience today.
I'd be surprised if you're right, yeah.
Hopefully I'm wrong, but it seems like we don't know yet. But I find so many folks like you that during times of trouble, recession, the economy stinks, whatever, it's the time where great creativity happens, right? So you were documenting these little nuggets, these little thoughts, and you always had the concept of, yes, one day I will write a book, but it was never in the third quarter of this year.
No,
so now you say,
never had a deadline, no.
Right, so now you say, well, geez, got all this time on my hands, what the hell, right? Yeah. So I think there's a lot of that happening now, quite frankly. I've heard from
even
friends and stuff
with
now.
Myself, we can talk about that later, but just to finish how I got into it, I ended up writing the book. It was very easy because I had all my daily planners for like 20 years since I arrived in America. So it was a good cheat sheet for me. And the book, when I got close to finishing, I went to seminars on how to publish a book. And I was in the lunch line at one of these seminars, and the girl in front of me asked what I did. And I said, I'm just finishing up a book on UGG. And she said, well, do you want to speak on the stage? And I said, oh, I'm not a speaker. And she said, well, I've got a seminar in 2 weeks, would you like to speak at that? And I just said yes, never having spoken, never having ever wanted to be a speaker. I didn't even know that was part of the deal with the book.
But let me pause you there, Brian, because it's interesting. There are very, very, very few people that I speak with that move into the speaking world that had a very deliberate, linear approach, right? It's usually something serendipitous like yours where somebody says, hey, would you like to ... And you go, okay. And then you fast forward and it's like, oh, I do that 50 times a year now. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, it's funny. So I had 2 weeks, and luckily I had a friend who used to work with Tony Robbins. She was one personal assistant. She said, well, you need, a beginning and an end and a couple of 3 or 4 stories, And so I thought, well, I can do that. So I just, pulled stuff out of my book and did my first talk, and everyone was really sympathetic for me. They stood up and gave me a standing ovation. But it was a pretty good speech anyway.
Yep.
But not technically, but the content and the delivery was, so heartfelt. And I was just telling true stories. And that's when I realized that, the best speakers are storytellers. And so
absolutely.
Over the years, I probably did it about 6 or 7 years. And overall, I've really developed it into a really tight set of stories, but also have a really strong mission to help people in the audience, with perseverance, practicalities of life and their business, especially geared for new entrepreneurs. Even though I speak to entrepreneurs, I can also speak at YPO, where you got the seasoned veteran, CEOs, and they come up afterwards and go, "Oh my God, Brian, you brought back so many memories for me," So that's
so let me ask you. So those are two quite different audiences: the classic entrepreneur, and the YPO person who's the president of a $50-100 million company or something. What is it? The commonality of the resonance. So for both of those groups, because their days look very different.
No, totally, yeah. Well, for the entrepreneurs starting out, it's like a roadmap, and it's sort of here's what you're going to encounter, and many of them, like the theme of the book is that you can't give birth to adults, and that's a theme I came up with after watching businesses for so long. Every business starts with conception, and then the first action, which is like me buying 6 pairs of samples, was the birth of UGG, right?
Right.
And then every business or service goes into this horrible infancy, and it just lies there, and there's no amount of yelling at it or feeding it or jiggling the cradle. An infant can't get up and go to college, it has to be an infant. But then it'll start toddling if you stick with it, and that's when the first customers are coming in and people are writing magazine articles about you, and that'll quickly go into the youth phase, which is consistent orders, consistent production, accounting and sales is all working fantastic. You can run a $20-30 million business in that youth, but if it's a really, really good product or service, you're going to hit the teenage years, and that's when you want to be in every party in town as a teenager. Well, in business, you want to be in every trade show, and you want to be in every mass retailer, and it's really easy to strip your capital out and go broke, So that was the theme of the book, and that's really, when I talk to the new entrepreneurs, they're picking up on, oh, look what I got to go through.
Yeah.
But the seasoned veterans are going, oh shit, that was a great talk. Thanks for reminding me of all the shit that I went through.
So it's look forward versus look back, right? Some are going, I can't wait to be a teenager and do all that. And the other ones are looking back, oh, God, was I silly, right? God, did I do some dumb things?
And because I pulled out stories from the book, the stories are really what keeps everybody really interested.
Excellent. So now we're in a stage of transition, right? Just in general in the world. And I think given that most of your work has been on the keynote side of late, right? Part of what we're seeing is people go, there's a couple of different reactions people are having. One is, oh my, the sky is falling, the sky is falling, the sky is falling, the sky fell, period. Right? Sure. So to me, it's about really thinking about, okay, well, what if I decompose the value proposition of a keynoter, right? You've got information, you've got content, you've got stories, you've got an audience that it resonates with, and then you had a modality to deliver that by. So assuming that what you have is still valuable, that hasn't changed, and assuming that the audience is still there, right? And it might be a different audience, it might be a new audience, it might be a subset of the audience that you've worked with in the past. What are some initial thoughts? I'm sure you've been thinking about this as of late, as to alternatives to the modality, given that speaking is not going to come back.
Already we've been in this couple of months, right? Yep. So I had 2 big bookings in Australia about 2 to 3 weeks ago. And believe it or not, I was in the departure lounge in LA when my sister called from Australia and said, the Prime Minister just announced if you arrive after midnight, there's 14 days quarantine, right? So I got my bag off the plane and stayed here. And I just assumed I've lost those 2 talks.
Sure.
Well, what happened over the next week was that they decided to go online and still hold the conferences. And the first one was a big regional event for EO. and I ended up with a program they sent me called Loom, and it's an Australian site called, sort of like Zoom, but I was able to load my PowerPoint on it and give my keynote with my PowerPoint. It was a brilliant program, and I pre-recorded that and sent it down, and they played it like they still had the 3 days of their conference, but it was all from home. And they played me at exactly the right time I would have been speaking. And we'd organized another interview where I had to wear the same clothes in the same background and look like he came and talked to me right after the talk. And that went flawlessly. And I mean, you should have seen the results, you know, where I got from all of the comments from the show. So there's a perfect instance where we had 2,400 people that were supposed to be live that now became 2,400 people online.
Sure.
And I gave exactly the same talk and did the same sort of Q&A afterwards. But because their organization went into a lot of expense, I ended up cutting the fee quite a bit. And I don't see that these online conferences are going to be very valuable to big speakers anymore.
If you're enjoying this episode of Leveraging Thought Leadership, please make sure to subscribe. If you'd like to help spread the word about our podcast, please leave us a review and share it with your friends. We're available on Apple Podcast and on all major listening apps, as well as at thoughtleadershipleverage.com/podcasts. Well, so I think that's right and I think here's the big if all you're doing is delivering, because let's go backward a half a step. So speaking has always been a transactional thing. It's an event-based thing, right? So correct. Someone, whoever hires you, is going to put a bunch of people in a room for some period of time, and you've got an hour to do your thing. Be engaging, be entertaining, tell the stories, pop some seeds into their head, right? And that has a value proposition.
Yep.
So now I think what's going to happen is we're going to have a flood in the marketplace of digital, people going on digital and saying, well, geez, I'll do it for 20 cents on the dollar of what I used to fly because I'll give you I think where the war is going to be, one is people thinking, well, forget these transactions. What is a learning experience that we can go through together? And there might be some pre-work. There might be some things we do in real time. There might be some ongoing learnings and reconfiguring and just going back to the drawing board on thinking about what that experience is. Because I think we've all been thrown into the pool saying, here's all these new technologies, figure them out. And some have been good at it prior to this and some haven't. Yes. And now you're seeing the uptick and the uprate of people being fluent in Zoom and all these technologies.
Oh, but I've seen so many instant seminars, and like daily radio shows, it's like they're getting drowned with it. Yeah.
Well, and the technology is in a more stable place than it's been, but I think that people are just going to have to rethink the experiential, right? So the traditional keynote of, someone introduces you, there's probably some music, there's probably some visuals, there's a visceral something. You can also sense a room and say, it's the second day of the conference. They're all hungover. Maybe take it down a notch. Or that young lady in the third row is dying to get a question out. I can't wait to talk to her or whatever. Right. So you're going to have to change some of your skill sets as well to adapt to delivering value when we're not together.
Yes. The thing that I'm afraid of is that there are lots of organizations with chapters all over the world. And it's been quite a good business going and speaking to all these chapters.
Yes.
And now one of those groups, which is a very big one, has asked if I could come and do it live online. And my question was, well, is this going out to the entire membership or is it, I don't want to put my whole keynote out on YouTube and
right.
download it. It's like, that's a proprietary thing. It's taken me years to build.
That's your intellectual property, right?
Yeah. And so.
Well, and the chapter model has always been typically based on geography. I'm in Denver, so let's get all the entrepreneurs in Denver. But now for meeting online, doesn't matter where I am, right?
Exactly.
So that might blow up the chapter model a bit.
Yeah. So but when I think in time, the reason these chapters developed is because there's a real place for people getting together and socializing, drinking beer, having food, listening to a speaker. There's a sense of camaraderie, and that's what that's what's kept these chapters together, is the human side of it, right?
Well, and I think what's interesting about that, Brian, is this community piece, right? Because you have content and you have community.
That's
so
right.
Content, you could do the same speech in Denver and Cleveland and Melbourne or whatever.
Exactly.
But this community piece, one of the things that we're seeing really, really early on in this crisis is people recreating community. So using Zoom to have a virtual cocktail hour. We miss seeing our friends, and we can't, we're missing the touch. But what can we do? It doesn't always have to be business. We can just get on and, I saw I haven't used it yet, a plug-in for Netflix, so a bunch of friends could watch the same movie at the same time and chat. So there is a human need for connection. You restrict it, you pull away the physical. We have tools to do that, right? So, this is a richer experience that you and I are talking, and I can see your face and you can see mine, and it was just video. And I think we're learning to adapt to that. It won't replace, but it's
the world is changing so fast. I mean, ever since I was born, the world's been changing fast, right? I remember reading a book called Psycho-Cybernetics that was saying that it was doubling, the amount of information was doubling like every year and getting halving every year, right? Well, that's played itself out for sure. And I was yesterday hanging out with my granddaughter, who's 2 years old, and she can navigate kids' Netflix, and she can select which movies she wants to watch. She can stop them if she's bored. She can go. Now, that's a skill.
I might need to call her because I have trouble with that. Can I call?
I do too. So that skill set is sort of innate to her growing up. That's natural for her. Mm-hmm. So I wonder where the future is going to be with this whole community getting together, for physical meetups. Mm-hmm. But I'm also enough of a believer in humanity that there's a definite need for humans to want other human interaction on a physical basis, and you'll never replace that on a TV screen or a computer monitor. And I think it's just a matter of time for this scare to figure itself out. I mean, I was way more scared of AIDS than I am of COVID-19, right?
Really? Right.
Oh, yeah, it terrified me. But it was, again, because of the fear. The fear was just intense with AIDS, the hatred and the exclusionism. It was a horrible period. Mm-hmm. This is very similar, but, it'll blow over. And
well, as opposed to AIDS, but this is universal, so it's not.
Exactly,
You can't ostracise a group and blame them and do all those horrible,
That's right. Although the media is trying.
Yeah, well, try as they will. Right. So really interesting. So as we start to wrap, if there was someone out there now that was a similar experience to you when you started in this speaking world 20 some odd years ago, what words of wisdom, what advice would you give them?
Well, you have to have a reason for doing it. I had a friend ask me, is it money or is it fame, right? So if you just want the fame, then just get on every damn podcast you can and every stage you can, and don't worry about getting paid, and you can be as famous as you want to be. But if you want to, like, I look at speaking as a business, and it's not an easy business, and it's you can't give birth to adults. I've had to go through the infancy and the the birth of that, and it's a grueling 2 or 3 years to figure out just how all these organizations work and what meeting planners are looking for. All these things. Getting your story is the easiest part. It's the stage work.
So let's separate that, because most people, and I don't want to undervalue the power of great stage work. It's kind of the easy part, right? So the business side of it, really understanding, I have a product, it's a speech, I sell it to these type of people that are looking for these type of outcomes. How do I serve them? Which are very different than the butts in the seats listening to the experience.
Totally different.
I think those that are truly successful are masters at both, because I've seen some folks that are amazing speakers, but they're horrific on the business side because they don't get it. They don't it's not how they're wired. And then you have others that are really good on the business side and maybe mediocre on the stage, and sometimes life isn't fair that way.
So when I started out, I had no idea of the business side, but really it took 2 to 3 years to start to figure that out and be able to have a plan on who do I serve, who's the key who's the gatekeeper, and how do I get in, and then how do I get paid? And those three things are very, very highly business oriented.
Well, and they're changing all the time, right?
All the time, yeah.
Great. Well, I appreciate your time, Brian. I love the story. Love the Uggs.
All right,
love your story.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's been great.
And good luck and stay safe. Thank you.
I wish good luck to all your speakers out there. It's interesting times.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you. To learn more about Thought Leadership Leverage, please visit our website at thoughtleadershipleverage.com. To reach me directly, feel free to email me at peter@thoughtleadershipleverage.com. And please subscribe to Leveraging Thought Leadership on iTunes or your favorite podcast app to get your weekly episode automatically.